3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
Okay,
should be everybody's on board now.
We have liftoff. All right. Good morning, Wayne Allen Root, a famed libertarian writer and firebrand, and sometime candidate, I believe.
I was a candidate for president of the United States in 2008. I did win the Libertarian vice presidential nominee. I ran with Bob Barr, four-term Republican congressman. I was the VP nominee, and that was where my political career began. I was never in politics, basically. I certainly never any major national level until then, and came out of nowhere and won the VP nomination, became a regular on Fox News.
Yeah.
And since then I've done about somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 by my math, 7,000 to 8,000 interviews since then on national and local radio and TV.
Excellent. And of course you're also a contemporary of the famed Barry Soetoro at Columbia
Well,
University.
I'm allegedly a contemporary. I mean, I always tell everybody that he was my college classmate. We both graduated class of 83 at Columbia, but people ought to be very worried about the fact that I knew everyone at the college and he wasn't there.
So in at least that mirror, there's no reflection of him.
I've never seen a single cent of Barack Obama, a single scene of Obama, any living proof that the man was at Columbia University. It's pretty scant. They claim there was one story in the campus newspaper written by him once in all his time there. So I suppose that's their proof he was there, but there's no human beings that could prove he was there. As a matter of fact, here's the thing. I've been saying this. We have a little fly bothering us. Good shot. I've been saying this for quite a few years. First of all, liberals love to call you a birther if you question anything about Obama's background. I've never questioned his birth. I don't know where he was born. I don't care. Yeah. But I've questioned why he wasn't seen at Columbia. So after all the years of saying why he wasn't at Columbia, I went to the class reunion, our 30th class reunion 2 years ago.
Yeah. And
I ran into Professor Henry Graff, the most famous professor and campus presidential historian in Columbia history. Knows everything about every human being that's ever been in politics that graduated Columbia, and of course every president in general.
Yeah.
And he said to me, I have serious doubts about Obama's story that he ever went to Columbia. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, can't find a single professor in political science or history who ever had him in a class. And you couldn't graduate Columbia political science or pre-law without being in my class, Henry Graff. And I've gone through all the records, and his name was never in one of my classes. So after all these years, I feel rather validated. Remember, he released his birth certificate. Lots of people still question whether it was real. I never gotten involved in that controversy.
I took a good hard look, and I had a couple of Photoshop experts take a look, too.
And they all felt it was a fraud, right?
The thing looks like it's been pieced together.
And that's why I was here. But I've never gotten involved in the issue.
It's either a very, very bad scan, as in extremely improbably bad scan, or else it's a fraud.
Right, and I've heard that again and again, but I've never been involved in it. What I can say is I noticed the one thing he released was the birth certificate. He thought that quieted all the things about his past. He's never, ever come close to releasing his college records, ever.
No,
Nobody has ever seen his college records, and here's a guy who says he graduated with me at Columbia, and he's a ghost. He's the ghost of Columbia.
I have friends in IT at Harvard. They can't find his records either.
From Harvard Law School.
Because they're locked down so tight that if they exist, you can't get them.
But at least at Harvard, we know he went there because he was the head of the law review. So obviously he was there. My question is, what was he doing at Columbia when no one saw him? Where was he? Yeah. What was he doing? In his own book, by the way. His own autobiography.
Yeah.
Not biography, autobiography.
Yeah.
He said he spent most of his time at Socialist Party meetings at Cooper Union, which is downtown Manhattan. So I think it's interesting. I've said for years, this guy's a socialist, and here he is admitting in his own biography he went to Socialist Party meetings, and liberals debate you and call you crazy for calling him a socialist.
Well, have you noticed that lately the liberals no longer can draw a distinction between themselves and socialists?
Yeah, I have
that their leading candidate, not their inevitable nominee, but their leading candidate is an unavowed, self-declared socialist.
Yes.
And by the way, he's an independent. He doesn't even belong. Well, he officially doesn't belong on the Democrat ticket, but he's put himself there, and not he, not the head of the party, and not multiple senators who've been asked can define the difference between a liberal and a socialist.
I saw
a Democrat and a socialist.
I saw when the question was posed to Debbie Wasserman Schultz that she could not tell the difference, or explain the difference. But here's the interesting part. So for 7 years, I've argued that every kid I ever went to Columbia with was, in fact, just like Bernie Sanders, proud to call themselves a socialist, a Marxist, a communist, or a Bolshevik. I heard that all the time, too.
Yeah.
Proud. And today we have not only Obama as president, a supposed Columbia guy, but his entire administration is riddled with Ivy Leaguers and Columbia grads. And interestingly enough, in the year 2007, you know what's significant about that year? It's the only year where you can match the voting record of Barack Obama to the avowed socialist Bernie Sanders. They both sat in the Senate together in 2007. Now, they did in 8-2, but he was running for president by 8. He was never there. He was absent all the time.
Yeah.
In the only year that Bernie Sanders, the socialist, was in the Senate with Barack Obama, the guy who claims he's a moderate and a uniter, not a divider, and would laugh at you for calling him a socialist, was the number 100 out of 1 through 100 senators voting record for the most liberal, which means he was more liberal to the left of Bernie Sanders, the socialist.
Of course, because Bernie Sanders actually has some common sense exceptions. Like
right,
he
actually
does. Believes in
guns.
He believes in self-defense.
Yes.
Exactly so. So, anyway, enough about history and Barack Obama, of which there's plenty to talk, and the liberals go crazy. About yourself, sir, and what are you currently doing to advance the cause of liberty? What should people be looking for or reading that you're up to?
Well, I'm probably most proud of my books. I wrote one 3 years ago called The Ultimate Obama Survival Guide, and that was the number one political book in the United States of America when it came out, and it was in the top 5, 10 straight weeks. Finished the year one of the top 10 political books of the year. I'm a small businessman, and I'm a citizen politician. I'm not a big, fancy academic or elitist or New York Times journalist. I don't work for Fox News. Nobody like me has ever, that I know of, had a top 10 best-selling political book. It's always someone who was a journalist for the New York Times or Newsweek or Time or the editor of New York. Very rare, so I'm very proud of that. Then last year I put out The Murder of the Middle Class, another book that 400 pages that tells you every fact of what Obama and his socialist cabal led by George Soros have done to this country, and how you're fed with lies by the media that the economy's okay and we're in recovery. It's all a big lie, covered up by EBT food stamps and welfare and the Fed printing money left and right, or you'd have 10 cities and food lines. And that was a national bestseller. And now this year I came out with a book called The Power of Relentless. So when you ask what I do with my time, all day long I'm writing. All day long I'm writing commentaries that are read by millions of people at Fox News and Breitbart and Personal Liberty and The Blaze. That's my number one place, The Blaze, Glenn Beck's site. And I travel the country giving speeches. And I think I've woken up millions and millions of people. I'm very proud of what I do.
That's absolutely terrific. And as I have read a few of your pieces, I am ashamed to say, read your books, but I'll make sure I get at least one.
The Power of Relentless is the new one. It was the number one business book in the United States in the month of August, which is pretty cool.
It is, of course, on Amazon and all the other places. And
the best place to find me and everything I write about, by the way, is my website, root4america.com. I'm Wayne Root, so it's Root, R-O-O-T, 4america.com. How do you remember that? It's what I do all day. I root for America.
That's fabulous. What do you think of the current crop of outsider candidates? Not necessarily Trump, but some of the others that are at least purportedly outside of the Beltway politics. Ben Carson, Carly Fiorina, Ted Cruz, who's still not tainted, and a couple of others who are really trying to capitalize on the people's realization that it's a uni-party system these days.
I've always been a rebel and a contrarian and an out-of-the-box thinker. And sometimes I'm even a rebel and a contrarian and an out-of-the-box thinker with rebellious people and out-of-the-box people. So it's funny that you made that comment. What do you think of all the outsiders except for Trump? Because you probably, that's your hint that you don't really like him.
No.
I love Trump. I think he's great for the system. Here's why I like him. It's not because he's libertarian, because he's not. It's not because he's conservative, because I don't think he's a principled conservative. It's because he's Uber.
Yes.
Uber blew up the whole taxi industry. And if you're a taxi driver, I feel bad for you because you're dead. You may not know it, but you're walking dead. There's no reason for anyone to ever get in a cab ever again. Uber is fantastic, and they just annihilated you. As a matter of fact, if you're a cab driver, I don't feel bad for you because if you're smart, you'll quit tomorrow and become an Uber driver.
And make more money.
And make much more money. So Uber is the greatest thing I've ever seen. It's so disruptive. Donald Trump is the most disruptive thing that's ever happened to politics.
Yeah.
If I had $1 billion, I would have been the Donald Trump of the 2008 or 2012 election.
Yeah.
But I'm not Donald Trump. I don't have his money, so I couldn't do that.
No.
But he reminds me of me, so I like him. I think it's good to be attack style. It's good to be aggressive. It's good to be combative. It's good to be on offense. Our side should always be on the attack and on the offense, not on the defensive, and Donald Trump does that. So I like his style, if not his principles always perfect. I like Rand Paul's principles, but I like the style of Donald Trump.
And there's a very interesting point. And no, I'm not totally anti-Trump. I'm actually coming around to the idea
There you go.
that the man is serious about doing the right thing for America,
Yes.
even if he has some flaws.
Agreed.
What worries me about Donald Trump isn't so much whether he's a principled conservative. I think he'll at least try to do the right thing. What worries me is he appears at least to be thin-skinned and inclined to simply go it alone. And we've already had one king in charge of the country, and we don't need another.
So let me give you a proof that he may be thin-skinned. I'm not going to argue what he is, but he does listen occasionally.
Yeah.
He's not just going alone, because one of the guys giving him constant advice is me, Wayne Allen Root. And so Donald has a mutual friend of mine. We're great friends, me and this gentleman's good friends with Donald. And so he sent Donald months ago many of my commentaries. Yeah. And I started getting emails from the office of Donald J. Trump.
Yeah.
And they would have an attachment. It would say, I'm Mr. Trump's assistant. He's got a note for you. And I would read the attachment, and it would say, Wayne, I loved your article. What a great column. Fantastic work. You're the greatest, Donald. And this went on for a few months, and I got quite a few of these. And I started sending him advice, and most of which I'm sure he ignored. But sometimes he'd send a note back and go, I love it. And then I'd hear him use it.
Yeah.
And finally, I said to him, you need to convince conservatives that you are a principled conservative. I want to write you a 13-point plan. Why 13? Because it represents the original 13 colonies. And I want to write you a 13-point plan that you stick to for the rest of the election. If you do that, you will win. And he sent back a note and said, can you write it in 24 hours? And I set aside a day and I wrote it. And I got it to him. And that was 2 months ago, and I never heard another word from him. So I thought he ignored it. Or I thought he didn't care. Or I thought he didn't like it. And he just threw it out. And then the phone rang literally, today is Saturday? This past Thursday, just 2 days ago. Mm-hmm. And it was Donald Trump's office. And they said, Donald loved your 13-point plan. His new book is coming out called How to Make America Great Again to pump up his campaign. This book's going to be the whole key to it. He wants your plan in his book, and he wants to give you credit and needs you to sign off on it. And we can't find it. It's gone. Can you send it to us again? So I sent it to him again. So it's now going to be part of his book. He listens. He remembered from 2 months ago that he liked it. He doesn't know what he did with it, but he remembers he liked it.
Oh, that's fabulous.
And that's a real Donald story, So
Yeah, that's good. And, the other reason why I think Donald's got a chance is, do you know his campaign manager?
I've spoken to him, but I don't know him like anything about his background.
Corey Lewandowski is a most excellent guy.
Good.
He was the New Hampshire organizer for Americans for Prosperity for several years, and then for the regional director for Americans for Prosperity. So he's got all the background of the Koch brothers and their striving for a freer and more prosperous America.
Right.
And so he took that with him to Trump's campaign, and you can see little bits of his advice in there.
Yes.
Do you know where he took something to heart that you said? When he signed the pledge,
yes.
Not only did I think he performed wonderful jiu-jitsu on the Republican Party, but he said what they don't. When he signed, he said, and I pledged my loyalty to the Republican Party and to the conservative principles for which it stands.
Right.
And I found that to be remarkable, not because it should be an amazing thing, but because the other people don't say it.
Right.
And he said it, and he basically put it in their face, I believe.
Right. Look, the big knock on Donald is that his ego's out of control, and I just laugh at that because you don't think every businessman has a big ego and every politician has a huge ego. You don't think every mayor and every town councilman of the smallest city...
You can't do that job if you don't.
Right.
It's impossible.
Exactly. Ego is part of politics, and you'd never be elected without ego. So, the argument is his ego's bigger than the rest. Well, that's why he's worth $10 billion. It's bigger than most businessmen because he makes more money than most businessmen. And I think that ego will allow him to get elected. I really do. I believe Trump will be the nominee of the Republican Party, and every expert I speak to thinks he will never be the nominee. All these guys I know who think they're so smart and they're they don't believe it. They think it's going to be Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio. Jeb Bush is at 4% in the polls. Jeb Bush is dead. They just don't get it yet.
Yeah.
Donald Trump, right now at this moment, and this is a big if, and I sent him a note about this, if he is serious, and he puts like $250 million of his own money right now into a national TV ad campaign, he will bury them all. It's over.
He's
He will
polling
lock
well,
up.
not just in national polls, but in straw polls
But-
and gatherings like this.
But here's my
Just
point.
everywhere.
He's polling well without spending $1 of money yet.
No,
His only money is an airplane flying around the country.
No,
and he gets free media. That's it.
Not only that, I know conservatives who have typically stood with the equivalent of a Ted Cruz or a
Yes,
Rand Paul,
who are going for Trump.
Me,
Me.
yeah. And by the way, I was totally shocked. One of the regular representatives from the Nashua area, who has hosted Rick Perry at his house more than once, and Rick Perry's a good man, not 100% conservative, but a very, very good man. I'm personally fond of him.
He is a good man, I know.
And when Rick Perry dropped out, he put himself behind Walker, which was disaster
Another tragic
number two.
mistake.
And Walker, to my mind, was the conservative who might just have been acceptable to the establishment. Except I watched the establishment walk right past him. I know the establishment in this state, and they ignored him. I thought that's a bad sign. And then Walker turns himself into Pawlenty Mark II and flames out as Mr. Milquetoast.
Well, look, all my books make the same point. I am very principled conservative. I'm a Ted Cruz or a Rand Paul in my views. But in my personality, I'm Donald Trump. And the Republican Party's been missing personality. And Scott Walker is a great guy, but he's got no personality.
None.
He's bland.
No, he hasn't. And I'm sorry to have to say this, his wife has negative personality.
Never met her, don't know anything about her. But
I met her a couple of times at a major Republican dinner where he was given a glowing introduction by the state grandfather, Papa Smurf Sununu. His wife managed to actually tick off most of the ladies at the event because she was just unresponsive, didn't twist that in a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
She really didn't engage.
Yeah.
She acted as if she didn't want to engage. I saw her again about a month or so later, just after his announcement. She was doing much better. They brought the kids. She mixed it up with the people.
She was learning.
She was learning. But she
Having survived that whole union thing, though, you think she'd be a little bit more.
Well, but she may not have been part of it. I mean, she's the wife. I mean, the
I know,
spouse
but her
doesn't
husband
have to be political.
Her husband, every day, her husband is getting thousands of death threats. There's people storming his capital. I mean, my wife worries when I travel to events. You know, I mean, so as a wife, I'm thinking maybe she's used to it as a politician's wife, but that was pretty intense.
But without even knowing her, okay, it's like a doctor who diagnoses someone with cancer. It's never treated the patient. Without even knowing her, here's what I'll say to defend her. Because of what he went through and the stress and the death threats, she may have developed a subconscious hatred of politics.
Oh, yeah.
So when she went to the events, this was all something she didn't want.
National
so
level.
So that's why I'm sure.
You mean we're
going
to do this in every state?
Right. You mean I have to go through a year of misery with
protesters
the death threats again?
And unions
so
chasing
that
me
was probably her excuse.
Could be.
But what's his excuse? When he went through it and he came through with flying colors, you'd think it would have made him into a battle-tested, combative, aggressive politician. But it didn't.
No, it didn't. And before we go too far down that rat hole, I ran into... there was one thing I was watching for from Walker. I never saw it. Mm-hmm. Only once is he ever recorded as having spoken out against the John Doe SWAT raids. And he didn't really speak out against them. He spoke out against Judge John Chisholm, who was persecuting him personally. Mm-hmm. And it got into a back and forth a couple of times. Nowhere did he stand up and say, you can't do that to my people and I'm going to come after you. Mm-hmm. He didn't say it during the investigation. He didn't say it when the investigation finished. He didn't say it on the campaign trail.
And these were his own supporters they were going after.
These were his own supporters.
I know.
The guy who took it to the Liberals, who took it to the judicial system, was in fact the local man on the ground for the Club for Growth, Ed O'Keefe. Mm-hmm. He was the hero.
I've heard that name. Yeah,
he was the hero of Wisconsin over the John Doe raids. Not Scott Walker. And I expected to see and hear Scott Walker stand up and say, damn it, this was an abomination,
right.
And we're taking steps to make sure it never happens again."
Right.
And he didn't say a thing.
The same way that, I don't know if you heard my speech last night, but my speech, I don't know if it was last night or it was maybe during the panel during the day, where I mentioned that Obama sicked the IRS. I mean, I went through 3 years of hell.
Oh, yeah.
And the result of that is it's an example of the corruption of government and the liberals who want no dissent and want to silence us. And it's a big issue for me because it happened to me. And I'm surprised that issue happened to him or his supporters, and he doesn't have an empathy for it and doesn't care and doesn't make it a big issue. He
needs a little Alinsky in him. He's not really,
Yeah, I've always argued that, you study your opponents and you pick up the best. Mm-hmm. And I think what I picked up from Obama is the power of relentless. That I did talk about in my speech last night. That the whole point of my book, Power of Relentless, is that we need to fight back with the same aggressiveness as they fight.
Yeah, never back down.
Obama lost in a landslide, got repudiated by the American people, and he's won every battle since. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. He never even lost a stride. We never even slowed him down. His response was, F you. I don't even recognize that any of you voted for me. You're not even real. He just ignored it. Some would say he's a maniac and a madman, but the end result is the American people don't seem to be angry about it. They don't even notice.
We have a constitution, and we have a majority in both houses of the Congress.
Right, and we achieve nothing.
And there are some Democrats out there who, in order to get elected at least, claim to be constitutionalists. And not one of those Democrats will lift a finger against Obama.
Well, who claims to be the constitutionalist? The president, Obama. He studied constitutional law. He's a constitutional lawyer. And I said from day one, the reason he studied the Constitution is to figure out a way to destroy it. That was what I predicted from the first day. His goal was to destroy it.
It's funny you should say that, because I was about to retort that essentially that was his opposition research.
Right. That's it. Well, so let's wrap it up. I've got to run. I got to play the catch.
Like me reading the New York Times, for example. That's
right, and I do too, and I read it just to know what the enemy thinks. Exactly. Yes. I love reading liberals because it gives me all my ammo, So Obama read the Constitution just to shred it and destroy it. That was his whole goal in life. And by the way, I think he was raised from almost, not from birth maybe, but almost from birth, from a young boy. Whoever raised him, all the people that influenced him, all had the same idea in mind, to destroy America. That's what Obama's been genetically programmed to do, to destroy America.
Got one of your cards, Steve?
Somewhere. Okay. Don't know where.
Steve's our editor and scheduler, but you can drop me a line. Okay. If you would like to talk to us one Saturday morning by phone.
Yeah, here, I'll just, I'll just give you my card.
Yeah, that'll work.
You give me your card.
Yeah.
I lose these things. I get 100 in an event. Who the hell knows who's who? But you take mine. Okay?
Thank you.
Now you know where to reach me.
That's a nice heavy card.
Yeah, heavy card. I do heavy cards.
Can you use it to break in?
Hold on. I have extra copies, so you're each getting one so you can't forget.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
This has been a educational, entertaining talk. I was really glad I spotted you and brought you over. Thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thank you for bringing me over.
All right, Wayne Allen Root. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
This will be online later. If you're not familiar with us, please take a bookmark for our website.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Got it.
All righty, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay. Let's see. We're going to take a little break here.
And that was Wayne Allen Root, famous libertarian, candidate, author, speaker, Firebrand. Yes.
All right, we're going to do a little audio test on canned music and sound and stuff, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Rock Talk.
Rand Paul's campaign manager. This is the man we want to talk to, Mike Biondo. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
Get the volumes right here.
Yeah, that's good. You got me on as well?
I got you on as well.
That's great.
We're having some distortion problems feeding out to one of our streams, and I'm just messing with microphones and knobs and everything, trying to make sure everybody can hear you.
Well, you sound fine to my ear.
Okay, good. Good.
That's all that matters. We could just talk to each other.
That's right. And we're recording it, so we can podcast it later.
We can play it later.
So, RLC Convention, great to see you here.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
We're glad to see Rand back in the state more. We want to see more of him and hear more from him.
Yeah, he loves coming up here.
I would think so.
He's a man with all the right principles. He's been having a little bit of a hard time on the campaign trail, though, I think.
No, I disagree. I mean, the media likes to paint a picture of what the campaign looks like, and as you know, and you both know actually, from being around this a long time, polls now really don't matter. They change. There's only 13% of the people in New Hampshire that have made a decision who they definitely want to vote for.
Yeah.
A lot of them are probably in this room today and yesterday.
Yeah.
But things are going to change and shake out. Some people are getting a whole lot of attention.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be fixated on just a few candidates. But the people in New Hampshire and Iowa and South Carolina and Nevada get the first four contests to make a decision on who's going to be the next president to launch them off to the rest of the states.
Well, and they do indeed. And as you know, or possibly know, some of us in New Hampshire are trying to get a conservative to the front of the pack by holding a little caucus event next week.
And of course, don't forget, the media lies a lot.
They do. They
lie
do.
a lot.
They do.
They
do.
pick and choose
well, they
favorites.
Spin. They spin. They wouldn't call it lying, but they
No, of course
they
they
do.
wouldn't call it lying.
Like for instance, there were some stories that came out of here yesterday. We had some reporters that were here all day yesterday, and they find the narrative that they want to put out there, which you can always find the narrative that you want and spin the story any way you want. So that's what they did.
Yeah, I know. And I saw some pictures, and luckily for me, I know lots of libertarians and lots of Rand Paul people and lots of political people, so I can go on Facebook and they were here.
Yes.
They can tell me what happened. I can see what was said.
The room was packed yesterday.
I don't have to rely on the freaking media.
Yep.
And that's why we do this, because, they suck. They really do. I mean, I know you need them, as a national campaign. You have to deal with the media, and you have to deal with the spin.
Well, one of the things I've always said, and I ran a national campaign in 2012, and I learned a whole lot. It was like getting a $60,000 college education, all in a 1 year and a half period where I got to learn.
I was at the Iowa straw polls when your folks were there,
yeah.
and I saw how badly they were treated by some of the other campaigns.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at it too. I mean, Rick was in 1 or 2%. This goes to your earlier point in the polls right about this time. And he ended up winning the Iowa caucuses and went on to win 11 states. The problem with what we had in Santorum's campaign at the time was we had such a finite amount of money, and we had to spend it all on Iowa. And the fact that we had to spend it all on Iowa, we never really got to build out. In Rand's campaign, he is building a organization that's going to go past the early states as well. I mean, we have hired people in caucus states around the country. We've been working the ballot access. We've been working the delegate stuff. So we feel about really good with where we are. And just last week here, we announced 300 members of our leadership team in New Hampshire. So, we feel like things are going very well. We got all 99 counties covered in Iowa. So
how do you feel? The RLC, we're at the RLC. The Republican Party has changed convention rules. 8 states, a bunch of other crap. What do you have to say about that?
I think they were trying to keep Ted Cruz out, but I'm sure Rand Paul.
I think they were trying to keep a lot of people
was also in their sights.
Well, I think the rules that got put into place last time had a lot to do with Ron Paul.
They did, and we know that our former governor here was at the convention. I was at the convention. I saw how angry the libertarians were because of the rules being rearranged even at the last minute to make delegates invalid.
So they moved it to an 8-state rule, which could make things very interesting. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, there are a lot of strong candidates in this field. It's one of the stronger fields we've had. So when you say it takes 8 states to get put into contention, that means a lot of people are going to be sticking around. I mean, typically you have 3 tickets out of Iowa, and then maybe another 2 or 3 tickets out of New Hampshire. I think you got 4 or 5, maybe 6 tickets even punched out of Iowa, could be, depending on how the final vote comes, and then at least 4 tickets that are going to be pushed out of New Hampshire as well. So it's a much different process. It could get dragged on. It could get dragged all the way to the convention. I don't think that's going to happen, but it could actually very much do that.
Well, there are going to be some that will reach a point of mathematical improbability where they're not going to get to the 8 states, and they'll have to drop out, essentially. The longer it goes on with more people in the race, the more probability there is that all but a few will find it mathematically impossible to get to 8.
Yes, but it depends on, for instance, you get to the SEC primaries, and those could get split up, 3 ways. You get to the caucus states, and, Rand could take the majority of the caucus states, but somebody could pick up one or 2. There's a lot of different things that could happen. Somebody could win Texas, which has a whole lot of delegates. I mean, after the 15th, everything's winner take all, so everything's going to change. But it's possible that you're walking out of March with several candidates, a lot more than normal, having several states that they're looking at coming next and saying, I still have a chance.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think it's going to go long here, and it's going to be interesting. Do we expect to see representatives of the Paul campaign at the 603 Alliance caucus next week?
Well, I have a concern with the 603 Alliance caucus. First off, I believe in the New Hampshire primary. And I think we have a process that's playing out here. I know a lot of our leadership team members are concerned that they're going in as Rand Paul supporters, and they want to make sure that they're coming out. And the way the caucus rules are set, that somebody could come in and bust a whole lot of people into this 603 alliance, and they would have to then be abided by whatever that rule is. And I know it makes some people on our leadership team concerned about that.
Yeah, but you'd have to bus in a very large number of people to totally distort the results. And we've got a lot of well-organized campaigns that we expect to each bring a decent number of supporters, and then it's down to letting the people decide. There's no way this can be rigged.
Well, that's what you and I agree on. I think the people should decide. I think they should decide on February 9th.
All right. Well, that's an interesting point of view. Our concern, the reason we're doing this, and not as Granite Grok, I'm speaking as
I know.
Also a member of the team for the 603 Alliance. The reason we're doing this is because what we believe is going to happen on the 9th, if we're not careful, is that there's going to be a lot of 3 and 5 percenters, and somebody with 20 or 25% is going to win the plurality, and that somebody might be the very one that most of us would rather not.
And I understand what the goal was, but I believe that there are a lot of strong campaigns, and I think February 9th is going to be a telling day. February 2nd in Iowa is going to be a telling day, and that's the process that should be played out. I'm also concerned that certain people maybe that are running this are also aligned with one of the candidates. But I understand the goals. I know most of you for a very long time. I think very highly of the folks that are putting it together, but I do have some concerns with it.
I know that there's a couple of the former team members are aligned with a certain senator's campaign, and they are not involved in the day-to-day running of this. Aside from one of them still being a webmaster for us, and Steve's also our webmaster, so we got checks and balances. We don't.
I love Steve.
Yeah,
He loves me.
We're doing everything we can to make this.
Mike's my buddy.
To make this look transparent.
We have a secret
and
handshake.
be transparent.
We want to see the secret handshake.
We want to make sure that there is nothing hidden, and it's an attempt to see if we can't have a beauty contest that isn't a buyable straw poll to try and get some momentum.
And
that's
no
my
matter what
worry.
happens in the caucus next week.
No, that's going to be fun.
Happens.
It's still going to be one hell of a good race down to February 9th.
We want to get Senator Paul on the show.
Yeah, we should make that happen.
Absolutely want to do that.
So
from phone calls, airport lobbies, wherever, on some Saturday morning. His schedule as far out as you know it.
Yep.
If you know of a Saturday when you think he can talk to us for 15 minutes or half an hour, let me know, and I will change my schedule to make that
and not
happen.
only that, if you've got an event that you're doing on a Saturday morning, we'll come and cover it live and live stream it and interview him before or afterwards.
Okay.
So happy to do
you
that.
guys are always welcome to any one of our events.
We definitely want to get more. We seem like we end up talking to the same 3 or 4 people all the time in this, and I'm like, there's like 11, 12, 13, at least, more 17, whatever it is now. It changes.
I think it's 15, 16. Who knows?
I think there's
44 could be.
We've talked to the non-percenters, and we've talked to some of the people who are higher up, and
exactly. I mean,
Jeb Bush been on?
No. We
I don't think he's going to want to.
Christie?
We haven't talked to him.
I actually did talk to one of his campaign people, and we're going to try and get Jeb Bush.
We talked to Pataki.
Just for balance. We talked to Pataki. We talked to Gilmore.
I just
saw Gilmore in the hall.
Yeah. I know he's around here. We actually interviewed him at the CNXT.
Talked to Carly a couple times, Ted Cruz a couple times, somebody else. Rick Perry. No longer in the race.
I've recorded Carson a couple of times. I don't know.
Corey Lewandowski. We didn't get Trump yet, but we did get to talk to Corey.
Yeah.
About that race, and so we're just long months to go.
We didn't get a direct interview with Walker, but we got his number one supporter at the time in New Hampshire, Ambassador Slayton, to come and talk to us. So we'll get the campaigns and the top campaign representatives for anybody that we can get.
You should definitely have Rand because he's much better than I am.
Well, listen, the general tone of this blog is conservatarian, and Rand Paul is directly in line with our philosophy. So we absolutely would want him on here. Our readers would want him on here. And
he's easily in the top 3 with the bulk of the people listen to us.
There is no bias here, only happenstance. You bring him, we'll play him.
All right.
All right.
We'll make that happen.
Good.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, sir.
Thanks,
you.
Steve. Thanks
Yep.
for having me.
We won't let them see the secret handshake.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
guys. Take care.
All right.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Rock Talk.
So we have friend Wendell Bowe, one of the long-time conservative activists of New Hampshire, and one of the prime movers behind the 603 Alliance, who are holding the grassroots presidential selection caucus next Saturday at Hopkinton Fairground. Fran, what would you like to talk about this morning? You can talk about the caucus. You can talk about anything else you've seen here at the Republican Liberty Caucus event.
Well, the RLC here at this meeting has been quite interesting, and it's a lot of liberty-minded people that I have personally a lot of things to agree with. They've had some dynamic speakers. It's not just for New Hampshire. It's an annual convention of theirs, and they've been very happy here in New Hampshire.
All right, welcome everyone.
We're going to be competing against a
coffee reception. So please
coffee
grab
reception.
some
But
coffee or tea. Hopefully they've got tea. back
they've had
there.
some great speakers and a lot of liberty-minded people, which
Yeah.
is just red meat for people like you and Steve and I.
Yeah, I wish I'd had time to be here yesterday, but I'm actually taking a couple of weeks off to get some stuff done around the house, but also to be ready for the caucus next week. And so I was working absolutely flat out all day yesterday. And then we took a break in the evening to entertain some folks to show the infomercial Citizen Carly. I call it an infomercial. It's a backgrounder by their super PAC to help to define her before the enemies define her, and I think that's a fair thing to do. It was an interesting little movie to watch, and then I was back to work until after midnight to finish off a presentation I've been working on for other people. Well. So now I get some time off. Now I can enjoy the show.
Wow. That's always a good time to stop and smell the roses.
Yeah.
The caucus next week we're excited about. I think we're going to have great attendance. I've been surprised how many people knew of it. Michael Steele, for example, when he spoke here last night, he talked with him afterwards, and he immediately knew what I was talking about and applauded our efforts and thought it was a great idea.
Well, we should have him come along and be one of our speakers, because he's absolutely a fabulous speaker in his own right.
He was a wonderful speaker last night, and he did give me his card and said if you need anything, so maybe that's a phone call I will make to him this week.
We need money.
We always need money.
We always need money.
Yeah, well, I've been doing my bit to round up some money. We've got
Trevor.
Here's Trevor. We may be able to get Trevor on here as well. But and it's come one, come all, and once again, we want to say all candidates are welcome to show up, are welcome to have representatives show up, are welcome to either Skype us or send us a small video clip to rally their supporters, and are able to pay to pitch a tent outside and do more to rally their supporters if they so wish.
But it's totally free to attendees.
It's totally free to attendees, because unlike certain straw polls where the outcome can be bought by sending the most supporters, in this case there is no cost to the voters coming in to support their favorite candidate, and that's why we think it's going to give a different outcome from a typical straw poll and a more valid outcome.
I agree with you, Mike. And the interesting thing is we do know that Donald Trump is not going to be attending. He has a very important meeting on Saturday with Ed Meese's National Policy Council, who are on the just last go-around before they make their endorsement. So, but the Trump people tell me that they're working on a surrogate. So I've been trying to guess who would Trump send as a surrogate.
Well, actually, I rather hope they'd send Corey Lewandowski, because Corey's a good speaker in his own right. He's the national campaign manager. He lives here in New Hampshire.
That would be a logical one, but I was thinking more of the line of Ivanka. Or with our luck, I could just see it being Dennis Rodman or Gary Busey.
Dennis Rodman or Gary Busey. That would be funny.
Yeah.
We would get some press out of that.
Yes, we would. And, any press is good press. How are we doing for media, Fran? Of course, Granite Grok will be there. I'll be making sure that we have at least some communications capability, and we'll be live streaming it. If we get enough bandwidth, we'll be providing Wi-Fi for other guests. And so the media can always follow us, but every time I run into media at any event, I'm always saying, you do know about this, we'd love to have you there, and by and large, they know about it, we just got to twist some arms.
And that's going to be determined by what candidates are coming. We do know that Senator Cruz is coming. We understand that Governor Pataki is coming.
In person?
In person.
That is going to be fabulous. That of course, may reinforce the impression that some campaigns have that it might be rigged for Cruz. And I'm going to say yet again, anybody can send their supporters. All candidates are in the race to begin with, and we don't have any control over which group you go and stand in. So there's no way it's rigged, but you know what? If Ted Cruz shows up, you know what I've always said is 90% of success is showing up.
I've always been amazed at that whole discussion. The people who are better at getting people to caucuses and polls and events than anybody else are the Rand Paul, Ron Paul people. They are legion at it. They're just very good at it. Why can't they do that here? Or why do they feel they won't succeed?
I don't know, because you know what? Even if it doesn't cost anything for the tickets, they can always invest in busing some additional supporters in. Of course, they can't bus out-of-state students in. You've got to be a registered New Hampshire voter to participate in this.
That's true.
Maybe that has some impact, because there's a lot of students for Ron or Rand Paul that go to these straw polls for them.
I feel bad because, if they don't show up, it's not going to look good for him.
No, exactly.
But they'll try using the excuse of, our people didn't want to have to say that they would support the winner. We're hoping people will unify behind that candidate, because it's not going to be a candidate that the establishment presents to us on a platter.
Correct.
And says, this is the person you need to vote for because it's the only person that can win, can raise the money, yada, yada, yada. This is going to be a consensus candidate by a group of mostly conservative activists, and that alone, I think, should give pause for people to say, this is a good idea.
And that's exactly why we chose the caucus, because you can't tell the cats who to vote for. You can't herd them. You can, however, let them choose the candidate that appeals the most and gather into the largest groups. And, it's what I tell everybody all along. The party has done its research, and it thinks Jeb is the most electable. I beg to differ. And they're going to do what they can with the rules and the procedures to make sure that Jeb has a fighting chance. And if we do nothing, what we will have is a lot of 3 and 5 percenters and one guy with 25% who is going to walk away with the plurality. And what we're trying to do here is to say, let the people choose. We can do the research, but we can't tell you who to vote for. Why don't you do the research and you come in and know who your first, second, and third choices are, and let us see how it plays out. And I bet that there'll be some people who walk out rather than support a different candidate, but I bet the majority of the people will say, you know what, let's see who is the most electable conservative here, the one that actually could get a broad base of support to win. Because if there's one thing the caucus winner will have, they will have proven that they can appeal to the largest cross-section of conservative and Republican activists.
Hey, how you doing?
Well, you may remember initially, Mike, that people were talking about, what if Jeb buses in busloads of people to vote at the caucus? Well, I think Jeb would have a problem finding busloads of people that would be willing to be bussed in.
You know the one who might just be able to bus in busloads of people is Mr. Fake Piety himself, John Kasich. He's got more supporters than you think in New Hampshire. I've talked to quite a few people, and it surprises me. But yeah, I tend to agree with you that Jeb might have trouble finding a lot of supporters. But, even if he buses in a couple of hundred, well, if we're expecting hundreds, maybe 1,000 of people there, as the groups form and reform, it would be very hard for Jeb to maintain a majority throughout all of that. And, if his group gets eliminated, then he can't win.
I think if you make in the top 4 or 5 in this caucus, it's a win situation for you, even if you aren't the winner.
Yeah,
but I think
just like the top 3 or 4 at the eventual primary in February will come out of here with some street cred.
So, if we get people thinking about their second and third choices, that is a huge step to begin with. The second step is maybe it's going to be the thing that's going to encourage some of these candidates to face reality and say, I didn't do well in this caucus. I didn't raise a lot of money in the last quarter, because those numbers are just starting to trickle out. And I think we're going to see a big thinning of the field in the next 2 weeks.
I would think that at least by Thanksgiving, this should shake down to the people who really are serious and have the money and the distance. Of course, Jeb has money, so no matter how he's polling, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah. The ones that really, I think, have the organization and the money, I'm thinking that Fiorina is beginning to show the organization and the money. Cruz is showing the organization and the money, lots of small donations. Carson is showing more organizational strength than you might expect. He's got some Tea Party organizations behind him. He's got some money. Trump, of course, is spending his own money at the moment, but I think even he's beginning to get donations. Kasich's got some organization and money, but I don't know how much of a blip on the radar he'll actually make. Rand Paul's got his committed supporters, of course. It'll be interesting.
He didn't raise a lot of money.
Pardon?
But he didn't
No.
raise a lot of
It'll
money.
be interesting if his organization actually embargoes the caucus and doesn't allow their people to go. In other words, 0.0, Mr. Blutarsky.
But the Rand Paul people are very dedicated, and if Biondo saw the wisdom in encouraging them to turn out, I think Rand Paul could do very well at this caucus.
He certainly could. I mean, first of all, the Republican activists in New Hampshire are naturally somewhat sympathetic to Rand Paul, some more so than others. Some are more libertarian, some are more traditional conservative. But he's got a good base of support here in New Hampshire. If those folks are encouraged to turn out, even if there are no representatives at the caucus, he'll at least get through the first few rounds. He's not a no percenter like, dare I say it, Gilmore or even Pataki might be. And I think Pataki's trying very hard here in New Hampshire. He'll have some support.
Jindal. I mean, there's a number of good conservative candidates.
Talking about people in asterisk country that really don't deserve to be there, Jindal is fabulous, but he's just not hitting it on the radar.
He hasn't resonated with anybody. I don't know if they really know who he is. I mean, we know who he is because he's been a star governor, a solid conservative in Louisiana. In Louisiana,
he's fixed education. He's fixed the state finances. He's poked the liberals in the eye with an executive order and his pen over religious liberty, and he poked Lindsey Graham in the eye in the junior debate when Lindsey was trying to defend nothing good happening in the Senate, and he went on an absolute rant, which I captured and posted, where he basically said, if you can't grow a spine, if you can't defund Planned Parenthood, if you can't do stand up for the principles of the party, well, then it's time to be done with the Republican Party. I mean, he was absolutely on fire. He said, time to start over with real conservatives.
Yeah.
If he was any more on fire, the drapes would have been catching light from his breath.
Yeah.
It's a good speech, and he has a future in the party, in a party, preferably the Republican Party, if we can get them to turn around.
Yeah.
But he isn't. He's. I saw him at an event, and he wasn't like that. Like when he was defending the principles. He was very soft-spoken. He's from Louisiana, so he's kind of got a relaxed delivery. He's got a drawl. We know that he has firebrand in him, but you don't really see that. And it's almost Scott Walker-ish in a way sometimes. And people are, like we were talking about earlier with Wayne Allen Root.
Yeah.
Trump is very popular because he is a character, and he is just out there, and he's just double tapping everything, you know.
And my prediction is that we're going to get a surprise at this caucus, and it isn't going to be what you think. I don't necessarily think it'll go to Cruz, although his organizational skills might do it. I am astonished at the people that I talk to that are for Trump. Astonished.
Non-political people, it's the first thing most people, when they see me, say, hey, what do you think of Trump? I really like him.
It's not that, Tran. Not only are the non-political people coming out for Trump, conservatives, people that I would expect to be behind a Cruz or a Carson or one of the other good guys on the list that's decently conservative, that people that have supported Perry and Walker in the past, people that are absolutely against big government and have been involved in politics, and they're saying to me, I'm a Trump supporter. I'm a Trump supporter too. I'm like, you what? People that I would never have pegged as Trump supporters are coming out and saying so. Mm-hmm. Ask Diane, who in the Nashua group on whatever night it was, Monday, came out and said they were a Trump supporter. I was blown away. I fell over. I'm not going to name names on the air, but somebody here, a local organizer who has hosted Governor Perry and other local luminaries, and I said, so who you thinking? He said, I'm with Trump.
It is amazing, and Mike, you touched on that Trump can self-fund, but that he's beginning to start getting donations. Well, think about it. What a hoot is that to write out a check made out to Mr. Donald Trump for $5?
Yeah,
even just for $5.
Take a picture of that
and say, I had to help Donald out. Donald needed a little bit of money. Yeah. Just to have
I
that
checked
returned,
my couch cushions and I sent him a couple.
Just to have that returned check where you sent Donald Trump some money.
That's fun.
It is.
It absolutely is.
And it's powerful if he could say, I've had 3 million donors, small donation donors.
Yeah, I hope he's not turning that money away, because that's exactly the thing. That is the point that Cruz makes that most of the others can't make. Oh, Carson, too, through the Tea Party organizations that did the Draft Carson movement. There are a lot of small donors through those. There are a lot of small donors to Cruz. And, some of the other candidates are big at pulling in the small donors. And that's where it's at, folks. That's where you show you've got a broad base. That's what Walker had, by the way. And I'm still blown away that they basically failed to excite anybody on the trail, meanwhile building a huge headquarters organization. And they burned what cash they had and collapsed. I mean, what a disaster.
And then drank the establishment Kool-Aid to go out, not only in flames, but pouring oil on the fire, saying we need to, reject the people who are leading in the polls and go with the establishment candidate that they think best for you.
Yeah.
Showed his true colors.
Yeah, but you know what? They say a dog can sniff fear. You were at the Rockingham County dinner when Governor Sununu stood up and he gave a very glowing introduction to Scott Walker when Scott Walker was the keynote. So much so that I asked the governor, what was that an indication of his leanings? He said, absolutely not. I got 5 or 6 friends that are in this. I can't endorse right now. And, and we had the conversation, which I've quoted a couple of times, where I said, well, some of them are a little more conservative than others, and they're all conservatives. And I tried again, they're all conservatives, which I took as absolutely fabulous. What blew me away was, Walker, I thought, was the one that was the non-Bush that was acceptable to the establishment. Sununu family en masse went right past him as irrelevant and picked Kasich.
Kasich initially was their fallback for Bush. Mm-hmm. When they decide to throw Bush under the bus, and they would have done it long ago if it wasn't for the money that Bush has raised, they were going to go to Kasich because it's all about Ohio. They figured he could deliver Ohio, although he's not polling number 1 in Ohio among the Republican candidates. So there goes that theory. But now people are starting to think that Rubio will end up being the default establishment.
It makes sense.
That's an improvement at least.
Yeah, he's young, he's feisty,
Lord.
He's very, very good on his feet. He's
but very bad on immigration.
He's bad on immigration. He's great on foreign policy, though.
Yeah. he's great at slapping down the liberal trolls when they get into his meetings. He's got a number of good points. He wouldn't be my last pick, but he's certainly not my first pick for exactly what you said, the immigration. So it's interesting. What the establishment is basically telling us is, screw you, America. Screw you, recent Latinos, and this is why the Republican Party doesn't get the Latino vote. Screw you, legally immigrated Latinos. We're going to let more illegals in. We're going to legalize the illegals that are here. We're going to undermine the workforce. This is what the Republican establishment and their donors are telling the base, and they're telling this is why they can't pick up the Latino vote. And so what if Rubio's Latino? If he's going to undermine the job prospects of Latinos who are here legally already, including his fellow Cubanos, why the hell are they going to vote for him?
I would be mad as the devil if I was a Latino who had gone through the hoops, who had waited in line, had met all the requirements to become a legal immigrant, and then to see these people who are just crossing the line and getting everything.
Grok Talk.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
Next up on Grok Talk, speaker, author, and activist Trevor Loudon.
Here's a sedate speaker, a gentleman who doesn't have a lot to say.
No, look, he is. I'm very reticent. Yes, Kiwis are known for that.
Kiwis might be, but Kiwis that have saved their own country and now want to help us save ours are not only rare birds, rarer than the kiwi bird, but they are in fact not reticent.
If you haven't heard Trevor speak, we had him on. He was the 603 Grassroots Caucus. We posted that. You have to come out and see this gentleman talk about unions and just read his book. I mean,
unions and communists and Reds under the bed.
Great stuff.
They're not under the bed. They're in the bed. They're getting room service and they basically got the master bedroom. They've got the honeymoon suite and they're using it.
Yep, they're giving the directions.
And what they're doing to us is what you'd expect.
On a honeymoon suite, exactly. To put it bluntly.
So you're at the Republican Liberty Caucus Convention. Is that the topic you've discussed here in your remarks, or?
Well, I haven't spoken yet, but I'm speaking at lunchtime, and the point I want to make is that.
Are you speaking in here at lunchtime?
Yes, I am.
We'll make sure we stay through and live stream you then.
I will be here, and the point I want to make is there is a great urgency. We have to win the next election because the Democratic Party is not the old Democratic Party. It's been taken over by the unions, and the unions have been taken over by the Marxists, and they're dictating terms. And what they want to do is legalize 8, 10, 20 million illegals, flood the country with refugees from the Middle East, turn them all into good little Democrats, and make it impossible for any other Republican or conservative president to ever take office. They want a one-party state. I want to emphasize that. So we've got one chance to do this, and the candidate that the Republican Party selects has got to be able to tap into the big pool of voters out there that is untouched at the moment, and that is evangelical conservative Christians. They are the only force. There's 50 million of them, 10 million of them who vote, 40 million of them who don't, and they are the only force that can counterbalance the illegals, and therefore the Republicans, if they want to win, have to stand with a candidate who can reach that group. And I think that's a very important thing for the people here to understand.
And I think so. And when you say one-party state, and that I would add to that and say one-party state with creeping Sharia law, because the thing that is different about the illegal Latinos who they are trying to legalize and about the Middle Eastern immigrants that they are trying to bring in is that they are not being forced, if I understand correctly, to swear allegiance to the United States.
That's right. That's old-fashioned.
Whereas anybody who was naturalized up until recently swore allegiance to the United States. And that is important. You're going to come here and you're going to assimilate. I'm going to stick my neck out and say you're going to assimilate or die, damn it. But but if they don't assimilate, they're not Americans. And that is the worst thing of all. And if the Middle Easterners coming here are not swearing allegiance to the United States, well, guess what? They're part of the worldwide Ummah. They are here to take us over.
Yeah, look, Bobby Jindal had a great little line. Immigration without assimilation is invasion.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what it is. Look, I've been to Minnesota. I've been to St. Cloud, where there's 60,000 people with 20,000 Somali refugees.
Yeah.
I've been to Dearborn in Michigan, which is now a Muslim town.
Yep.
And I've got the dirty looks as I've stood in the mosque. I've got the dirty looks as I've gone into shops to buy stuff from them. And so, look, this is the plan. The left wants to destroy America's constitutional republic. So they have their own agenda. They have immigration amnesty. They have Obamacare. They have gutting the military, taking away your gun rights. But they are working with the Muslim extremists who want to set up enclaves all over this country to basically expand their power, to institute Sharia law, and bring you down from that direction. So they're all working together because both groups hate America.
Yeah, this is something I find highly incongruous. If you look at the socialists and how they are working, they all believe that they will be in the apparatchik class. They will be the ones with the dachas. They will be lording it over us. Whereas in reality, most of those are going to be living in abject poverty, just like they're going to do to the rest of us.
Yep.
And the other phrase that comes to mind is useful idiots.
Yep.
Do they think that if they work with and empower a Sharia takeover of the United States, that they are not going to be the first up against the wall when the revolution comes?
Well, it's pretty hard to me. Some radical gay activist out in San Francisco fighting to allow a Sharia law into San Francisco. How do they think that's going to impact on them? Do you think the Muslims are going to become tolerant of gays after 700 years of saying the exact opposite? 1400 years, yeah. So look, but these people are short-sighted. They want power now, and they will work with the devil to get it. And they will worry about the consequences later. And they deserve the consequences of that, but I just don't want them dragging us down with them.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to suffer, look, there was a case in Spain very recently. A young left-wing woman was working in a refugee camp with her other left-wing friends to help Sudanese refugees enter Spain. And she was working away. She was trapped by a bunch of them and gang raped in a bathroom. And she was told by her friends not to report that because that would destroy their movement. That would destroy their dream of a borderless society. So she kept quiet about that for several months. Now, she may deserve what she got, and I hate to say that, but she is setting up a whole bunch of other people for the same fate because she didn't report what had happened to her,
and
she was
that's
actively.
Exactly it.
It's a suicidal thing. It's a death wish.
Right,
You're deliberately undermining your own society, putting your own children in danger because you have this fantasy of some world-classless Marxist society, which is never going to happen. And you are putting yourself in danger to do that, but more than that, you're putting your children in danger. Don't these leftists see what they are condemning their children to?
I mean, and this woman of all, she got gang raped, and she kept it quiet so that other people could get gang raped.
Because
how irresponsible is that?
Yeah, because the cause was more important. And look, I mean, PC in the United Kingdom had reached the pitch where the grooming of teenage girls and the gang raping of women and the molesting of women that weren't covered up like Muslim women was so epidemic in the northeast of England, especially in Leeds and Bradford, which were early centres for Pakistani immigration. It became so bad that nobody was reporting these crimes, that the police were turning a blind eye. It took a major blow-up with hundreds of girls being molested and groomed to hit the newspapers before there was enough outrage to do anything about it.
Because they didn't want to offend Muslim sensibilities, to create a racial tension or whatever, so they're willing to sacrifice their own children to that cause.
Well, I think being gang raped creates racial tension. Maybe that's just me.
I wouldn't think so. But this thing, and I'll qualify the statement I made. That woman didn't deserve what she got.
Absolutely not.
But by not reporting what she got, she is endangering other people to suffer the same fate. Yeah. And that is the height of irresponsibility.
It's certainly not somebody who really cares about what happens to people.
Yeah. Because the cause is greater. This imaginary cause, this pie-in-the-sky world that will never, ever happen, is greater than bringing people to justice for committing a heinous crime. And that's, if she wants to make that decision for her sake, well, that's her right. But she cannot look her sisters in the face and say, I'm looking out for you girls, I care about womanhood, I care about your safety, if she is willing to allow that kind of situation to happen.
There's been a lot of media reports about the refugees and rapes and things. Do you see this getting any momentum, outside the control of the media?
Yeah, look, I do. The grassroots media is making a lot of this, and as they should, because we all know that the mainstream media has been in the tank for the left for the last 50 years, and they will cover up any atrocity, they will cover up any heinous crime if it in any way endangers their narrative.
Which is why the crimes committed by Mexican immigrants were covered up until it became impossible to do so. It's why the crimes committed by Muslims are mostly covered up, unless it becomes impossible to do so. And the other case of reality slapping folks in the face was Germany a couple of weeks ago, where they had these refugee camps, and they were co-ed integrated refugee camps, and the women were getting abused. And I said, frankly, it's because they made a mistake. They're treating them like normal people.
Yeah, they're treating them with they'll have the same civilized norms that we expect in this country.
It's a completely different worldview.
It's a third world. They're coming from third world countries where women are subjugated, treated as chattels, and they are kept apart in their own societies for that very reason. Women are very sheltered in these societies because they know how predatory some of the men are. So they bring them to the West and they mix them all up, and they wonder why they have problems.
Yeah,
because they expect the same standards that you would expect here.
So, in effect, the way women are treated in Islam is a two-way street. They know how bad their men are, so they lock their women up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so they bring them into the West and let them loose and wonder why there are problems. And when there are problems, they cover it up because they don't want to destroy their narrative of this wonderful multicultural society where we all benefit from each other and we all live together in perfect harmony. You don't mix a medieval chauvinist patriarchal society. You don't bring those people into a modern Western liberal democracy and expect there to be no friction, to expect it all to go well. It's just an impossible dream.
Well, these men have been
seen the results of that.
As if that's their privilege. And these Western women, they have no sense of that. They don't even know about it for the most part.
The guys believe it's their right to take any woman that's not properly covered anytime, anywhere.
Yeah, so that's not, so you get these Western feminists who buy into this, because they hate Western patriarchal capitalism, they are willing to bring a third world culture into their own countries because they believe it will help to break down their existing structure. Mm-hmm. And they are willing to cover up the crimes of the people they bring in to preserve their narrative. And I think that's plain evil.
And no wonder they want to disarm the people, because the people are going to start defending themselves. You're going to start finding dead immigrants.
Well, God forbid that ever happens. But Enoch Powell, back in Britain, warned of rivers of blood. And he was so widely decried
as a nasty, evil racist. At the time, when I was only a teenager, I believed the media narrative. And now I'm looking back, and I reread a couple of his pieces. The guy was completely prescient. I mean, look at the mess we've got in Britain right now. We treated all the people of the British Commonwealth as equal. we treated all the folks in the Indian subcontinent as equal. We allowed, until it became too much of a problem, the right of residence to anybody who had ever had a British Empire passport. So the Indians came, the Jamaicans came, the Hong Kong Chinese came, and the Pakistanis came, which of course, once they got independence, India split into its pieces. There was India, and then there was the hellhole of Pakistan and the uber hellhole of Bangladesh, both of which were Muslim. And these folks came, and the Indians came, and they were doctors, and they were shopkeepers, and they were engineers, and they integrated. And the Pakistanis came, and they were doctors and shopkeepers, and they pretended to integrate until there was a critical mass. Yeah. And now they have their Muslim enclaves. They own and run the town councils in some of these cities that I mentioned.
Well, the same thing happened in Australia after World War II, because there was a massive influx of Lebanese into Australia. Half of them were Catholic, half of them were Muslim. The Catholics integrated, they became doctors and lawyers, professionals, became pillars of the community. The Muslims ghettoized because they have a different religion and a very different mindset. And so they brought their Lebanese civil war with them, and now they figure very prominently in the crime figures. They're very heavily involved in drug dealing, and that's what's happened, and we know that that's going to happen here. Like I was in St. Cloud, Minnesota. That's a town of 60,000 people. They dumped 20,000 Somali refugees into that town, and now the native population is fleeing. The property prices are going out the bottom. So people are losing their life savings, their investments.
But they'd still rather leave. Just like Detroit.
Well, exactly. But see, that's Michelle Bachmann's district, or was Michelle Bachmann's district. So you tend to find these refugees being dumped into conservative districts because you know that when they get citizenship and voting rights, they ain't going to be voting Republican. They ain't going to be voting Conservative. They're going to tip these districts into the Democratic camp, and you're going to and so the Democrats benefit from this in all sorts of ways. They expand the welfare state. They destroy conservative districts. They did this with Orange County in California, once the most conservative district in the United States. Mm-hmm. Illegal immigration has turned that into a purple area. You have Democrats representing which was once the most conservative county in the entire country. And this is not accidental. This is completely in line with the long-term Marxist and Muslim plan to bring your country to its knees and destroy your constitution.
Well,
they're using people and demographics to do it.
As I think it was Khrushchev said, we will bury you.
We will.
And they are burying us.
Yeah, they're burying us. Yes. He probably was misquoted. He was probably slightly. They didn't know about Barry at that time. They probably thought he said Berry. But exactly. And so Obama was groomed for a long time by the left before he assumed his current position. And people still, even some conservatives will still say this man is stupid. He's an ideologue. He's out of his depth. He doesn't understand. No, he perfectly understands what he's doing. What he is doing, if he was an idiot, would he not make some mistakes in your favour once in a while? But everything he does is to a plan. Everything he does is to weaken your country economically, politically, morally, spiritually. Any way he can, he's here to weaken America. And he's got a whole bunch of compliant Democrats who just love his agenda and are very happy to go along with it.
These school shootings have reached a pitch that I am beginning to think that some of these are plants. It has got beyond the pale. We've got these gun-free zones, target-rich environments, and it seems like every week there's another case of some guy goes nut job and opens fire. And the people are defenseless. Well, they picked the wrong victims in Oregon because the people said, we'd have rather been armed, thank you, and why were you stupid enough to have the security guards unarmed? Somebody needs to be fired. Oh, and Barry, go home.
They made a stand against them.
They made a stand, but nearly everywhere they get away with it. And I'm beginning to think that it's deliberate, that it's part of the campaign to make people revile guns because, in fact, and certainly since Obama's been in charge, the percentage of people saying that that having an armed citizenry, having guns in the home is a good thing, has gone from about 30% to about 70%. There are more Americans today than 20 years ago, by a big margin, are in favor of an armed citizenry. Yeah. This is no coincidence, as the policies of the uniparty leftist leadership gradually drive down the prospects in this country and turn it into a banana republic hellhole. The people are saying, well, damn it, we're going to defend ourselves. Yeah,
you see this all over the place. And, I go to Tea Party meetings all the time, and people say to me, well, what's your security? And I say, well, I hang around with the Tea Party. I know half the people in this room are armed. There's never going to be a shooting here. But I wouldn't want to go into college campuses or a place like that, because I know I'm very unsafe there, because who knows what lunatic could have a gun. Mm-hmm. And
only the lunatics will have guns, because the sensible people will not risk being arrested for the chance that their concealed carry gets found out. Yeah, it's look, there's so many young Ritalin dosed up young men out there, disaffected young men, who scour the internet every day and glorify mass killers. It's their only chance at fame, that these incidents are going to happen. And and we know that, like army recruiting centres are going to be attacked. So the sensible thing would be to allow army recruiters to carry weapons, arm the armed services, and to have security guards on campuses and allow people on campus to carry weapons to protect themselves. Yeah. That would cut down on campus rapes. That would cut down on potential for these campus shootings. If some guy knows that he's not going to go out in a blaze of glory and shoot 40 people, he's going to be lucky to get away with 1 or 2 before he gets gunned down. He's going to think this is not a good investment.
Yeah, if he doesn't get to 3, it's not a mass shooting.
I'm going to get no glory out of this.
Correct.
My name is not going to be in the papers. And that's what these guys do it for. Mm-hmm. They want to break the record. They want to be the best mass killer.
Part of history.
That's
exactly.
Thinking.
Just simply arming the professors or teachers, and requiring them to take basic firearms training and to be competent. Would be, in my mind, a huge improvement, because that way there would be no room on the campus that would be safe for a mass killer.
Yeah, exactly. And just the thought of knowing, you don't know your professor's got a gun, but the fact that they're allowed to carry them, you don't know. You're taking a huge risk. These people make calculated risks. How many people can I kill before they get me? And if they know it's going to be very minimal. See, you look at a country like Switzerland. You don't get a lot of mass killings in Switzerland.
You don't get that many home invasions either.
Well, you don't, because every Swiss home is required to have a gun, not is allowed to have a gun. It's a mandatory thing, because that's what keeps their country free and neutral. So it destroys the left's whole argument. The Swiss are absolutely awash with guns, one in every household. You don't have home invasions, you don't have mass killings. The homicide rate is one of the lowest in Europe, if not the lowest in Europe. And we see the same in the United States. The cities with the most restrictive gun laws always have the highest murder rates. It's not rocket science to figure this out, but the left doesn't. This is not about logic. The left is not actually anti-gun. It's just anti-you people having guns.
They love guns.
They want to have all the guns themselves. They want the monopoly. And this is the whole agenda, is to disarm the populace. It's nothing to do with making the people safer. Nothing at all.
It isn't. Well, anything else? We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. And I wasn't sure if you'd signed up to join us for our caucus. Certainly you gave one of the best speeches at our kickoff meeting on April 19th, and we really appreciated that. It's got a good lot of watches on Granite Grok, too.
Good.
And it's certainly a great topic, that you need to elect somebody who's going to turn this around. Yeah. And that's the place where we want to start that.
Yeah, well, and this is what I want to address today, we can, there's an endorsement going to come out of this meeting, and I think that's very important. And there's 2 people that are in the running, And the people have got to make a really good decision on who they endorse, because this is significant, a very significant part of this electoral cycle. So I want to say my piece on that.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
And now, political activist Tom Flaherty.
And talking of Tea Party and libertarians,
this
we
is the guy we
have the
Put a
famous
headset on.
Tom. Grab the headset. We don't see this guy often enough. This is Tom Flaherty, one of our contributors, and a fabulous Tea Party activist that just doesn't get to be in studio very often because
He's a busy guy.
Because he's a very busy guy fighting for your freedoms.
Fighting for freedoms and 2 kids in college.
Yeah.
And about to have 3.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm one of those broke dads that has to work all the time.
I have 2 kids in community college, so I'm doing okay.
Yeah, and I work in Boston.
Still, you work in Boston.
That's my big problem.
That's the problem. You have to travel back and forth to work.
We need this legislature and a good governor to finally change these business taxes, and
we have the
highest regulations.
We need a non-Democrat governor, preferably the best Republican governor we can get. I would be willing to tolerate an incremental improvement because almost any Republican governor
is going to be better.
And we're going to get some things passed that we really need.
Chris Sununu would be good. Frank Edelblut would be fair. A real conservative would be great.
They wouldn't just cast the lot for the Obama agenda right down the line on the veto strip.
No, they wouldn't.
No. So yeah, we get the highest, one of the highest regulated states in the country for businesses. We have the highest or second highest business taxes in the country, I believe.
We're in the top 3, I think.
And our country has the highest business taxes in the world, so do the math. New Hampshire has,
oddly enough, despite that, New Hampshire has so many other good things that we still rank business-friendly in a lot of surveys.
Sure.
Because, there's no income tax, there's no sales tax.
That helps the businesses, but it doesn't create jobs.
Right, it doesn't create jobs. It helps, and to be honest with you, we've actually had some job growth in New Hampshire, but we could have so much more. Yeah. There is so much opportunity in New England, so much business in New England that we could have in New Hampshire.
Huge.
All those gun companies that have been moving, they could be coming here.
That's the place to come because we're Second Amendment friendly, so why not? I think some of them have thought about it, but then looked at the enterprise tax and the profits tax and said,
Well, and didn't Ruger go to a right-to-work state?
Yes,
when
and
they
we're not
built
right
another
to work.
Facility?
That's another thing.
They've grown here, but...
Yeah, yeah. Well, we would have right to work if it wasn't for Maggie and
exactly.
and what's his name?
Folks. Yeah, and some Republicans. Like Susan Carson and ran for Congress. We were just talking about
Who's that, sorry?
Who ran
Emerson?
No, he was in the Senate.
Frank
the
Edelblut?
Colonel.
Oh, the
Colonel, what's his face?
Oh, Gary Lambert.
Gary Lambert.
Oh, Gary Lambert. Oh,
he was also
yeah.
bad on
right to
RGGI.
He's a Reggie guy.
We've had some. He got in 2010 with the Tea Party, and he voted like a rhino.
He talked the talk at the time.
And
then we found out
and this is what I was saying to Governor Gilmore about the difference between
hey, look at all these guys we got coming through here. Leon Rideout.
Yeah.
Leon, how you doing?
Hey.
Joe.
Yeah.
How are you?
Joe, how you doing?
Yeah. The difference between lawyers in uniform and actual veterans.
About veterans?
Yeah, the difference between lawyers in uniform and veterans.
We had that conversation, too.
Oh, is there? Yeah, there's a difference sometimes.
Well, we had Governor Gilmore here, and we were talking about that.
And he was actually in Europe with NATO, and if not on the front lines, maybe on the hidden lines, according to what he says. But, the fact is he wasn't a lawyer in uniform.
Yes.
Governor Perry was not a lawyer in uniform.
Right.
A certain senator from down south is a lawyer in uniform.
Right.
A certain would-have-been senator here is a lawyer in uniform.
Is Gary a lawyer in the military?
Yes, he was a lawyer.
He was a lawyer?
Yeah.
So he was JAG?
Yeah. So, he's right in there.
And I want to say, too, being a veteran myself, you do not put pictures of yourself in uniform on your campaign website when you're
against the
still
law.
in uniform.
Right.
Afterwards, you can do that to a certain extent, but it's not in all the best taste. But while he was in office, while he was in service, he had pictures of himself in Iraq on the webpage. I called him out on that in email and told him, you better take it down. He didn't, but so that just
Now, doesn't
judgment.
DOD have rules against that?
They do. It is against the law.
Right.
And many people, John Kerry himself broke that law. Not John Kerry. Who was it?
McCain?
Who?
McCain?
No.
I forget.
It was like 20 years ago he did it, and it's been illegal for a long time.
We've had local candidates who've done it too that we've called out.
Yep. We should call them out. I mean, that's there are rules, and you should change the rules if you don't like them. And
or leave the service in order to run.
Exactly.
No,
it's okay to be
unlike certain other candidates who, whilst in the reserves or the National Guard, got several honorary promotions due to his congressional service.
Yeah. Let's see. What color is his last name?
Some sort of cracker, I think.
His Charlie? Is it? No, not Charlie. I forget. Oh, James. No, not James Brown. There's all kinds of bad things that guy did. So
no, it was the other guy from South Carolina. He got honorary promotions.
Oh, him too.
In the National
so we're
Guard.
not talking about Scott Brown?
No.
We're talking about the other kind of cracker. Yeah.
The graham
Right.
cracker, yes.
The one that you have with s'mores. Oh yeah.
Invented by a guy to help drunks with hangovers, I think, or something.
Yes. I've never seen a guy who was in the military for 33 years that looked like he should have a bow on the top of his head. I'm sorry, I know you're not gonna want me on Grok Talk anymore. That's probably why I don't.
Are you kidding me? He advocates for a military takeover of the government almost weekly. We're gonna an armed resistance of whatever. So no, it's fine.
I promised to be on the Grok this winter because I'm going to be working at home after a couple more weeks. So
good deal.
Excellent! You've actually persuaded your company to let you work from home.
I did. I have to spend 3 to 4 weeks down in Quincy full time, which I'm doing now, living down there with my family. I came from the South Shore originally. And after those 3 or 4 weeks are up, I'm going to be working in New Hampshire. So
good.
Does that mean your pay point will be New Hampshire and you'll be tax-free or die?
I will be tax-free or die.
That's what.
That's cool.
I came to this country in 1985. Sometime in the late 90s, I got offered a job, and the company had offices in Massachusetts. But I was going to be a traveler for one of their subsidiaries. Yeah. And I said, do you need me to go to an office in Massachusetts? And they said, no. So if I move to New Hampshire, will I be taxed as if I was there? Yes, that would be your pay point.
Yes, it's where you earn the money.
And at that point, I sold my house and moved to New Hampshire. And that was 1998. I joined the company a little in the mid to late 90s. And I haven't looked back since.
No. If you're going to pay the property tax, you might as well find a way not to pay the income tax there.
Yes, otherwise you're getting screwed twice.
Yeah, and there was a job that I had where I worked 1 day a week at home, so 20% of my income was not taxable to the state of Massachusetts.
I actually worked for, when I worked for Papagino's, they transferred me from a New Hampshire store into a Massachusetts store. And when I got my bonus check, which I'd earned in New Hampshire, they had taken Massachusetts taxes out of it. I'm like, I've got to go fight that,
Hey, an observation I had this week, too. It's not really politically related, but I spent the week living in Plymouth, Mass., driving to Quincy every day, so I was a South Shore rat for the week, right? The Irish Riviera.
Yes.
I come from that area when I left there 30 years ago, but I can't tell you that we all know this, but I just experienced it for a week. And the difference in the behavior and the courtesy, and obviously evident in the driving, but just in general, the people in New Hampshire, we are definitely nicer to each other, more courteous in general. It's so stressful being down there. It's just so compressed. There's the regulations. You can just feel it. Yeah. Here you can feel the difference. You can feel a little more of a freedom feel. And when I lived down there for a week, I felt the difference, and I felt it today coming back. So I just appreciate being in New Hampshire even more.
Well, good.
After
it's good to be reminded how much better it is.
Context shifts.
No matter,
are
I
always-
mean, being in the political sausage factory, you see the worst of everything.
I know.
All the time, and you forget that most people aren't in there with you.
Right.
And when you step out, whether you're stepping out into a different state to experience their culture.
The exception last week was somebody letting someone else go.
Mm-hmm.
The rule was gunning it to beat them to it and potentially killing them in the process. Here it's the other way around.
You can't steal their space. They're going to keep it. They're going to accelerate and close the gap. Oh, by the way, they all know what the game is, which is why they don't indicate either, so they can take that gap.
A blinker is a sign of weakness.
That's right.
Yes.
We use those in Massachusetts.
So, and the same is true politically here too. It's different. Even though we have our little disagreements, it's just at least we have a chance here.
Yeah, we're not gone yet.
I've unlearned some of what I learned when I was living in Massachusetts. It always amuses me when I live in Massachusetts. They because the roads are congested, they always pass on the wrong side anyway on the highway. But then not only do they pass on the wrong side, they cannot judge speed and distance. They are actually genetically incapable in Massachusetts.
The time it takes to do that judgment, you lose.
No, it's not that. You're cruising along. There's stuff in all three lanes, and there's a truck some distance ahead in the right-hand lane, and the Massachusetts driver will cut around you on the right and run right up behind that truck and then realize he's got nowhere to go.
Yeah.
They can't think it out in advance. And I watch it over and over and over on Massachusetts roads.
This is what happens when you lose your liberty. You lose your distance judgment. And
you're like, F it, man!
Right.
Well, they don't actually hit it, but they drive into a box and then can't figure their way out.
They hit a lot of things. They do. I have a lot of relatives, and they talk about how many accidents they've been in, and they're all fender benders.
Yeah.
It's like merit badges.
All right, so I guess we're going to get started. Tom, thanks for taking
we're ready
a
to
couple
roll.
minutes.
Tom, thanks for joining us.
Rock Talk.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Rock Talk.
And next up, Republican presidential candidate Mark Everson.
So you are also running for president, is that correct?
Yes, actually. If you go to the Republican National Committee website, there are 16 of us. It used to be, one point there were 36 in their straw poll, then it was down to 18, but Perry and Walker are out, as you know, and there's 16 of us that they carry. I was 6 years under Reagan, 6 years under the second President Bush, and I have a lot of industry experience. I've run factories. I've lived and worked overseas in Turkey, France, and Zambia. So what I offer, Mark Everson, people can go and learn more about me at Mark, M-E-R-K-F-O-R, America.com, or if they pull up Mark Everson, E-V-E-R-S-O-N, Google me, they'll get to it. But what I offer is that combination of an outsider's perspective, private sector experience that is so lacking in some folks, if you will, who are in politics, and then also a knowledge of the government itself and how it works. But I'm not a politician. That's the point. A lot of the folks that are running, they've got years in the system, one way or the other. They can cast themselves as outsiders, but if you're a senator and you spent your career in state government, you're not an outsider. You're a politician.
Sure. And there are quite a few that fall into that category that have been in some state house or other before they were in the Congress or Senate.
Exactly.
There are some that have lived in government for 20 or 30 years, like the pious governor of Ohio.
And that's exactly right. There are many people who have that. And what I say is nobody has bought and paid for me. And I can tell you, I've had some difficult jobs. I was asked to do those jobs. I ran INS operations under President Reagan. And then I ran the IRS for 4 years under the second President Bush. But we didn't have any political targeting. Somehow we managed to get it. I've run a clean shop through that period. And I did difficult jobs that I was asked to do. But nobody, I can guarantee you, nobody puts their arm around you. If you're the IRS commissioner and says, Mark, one day you'll be president. That doesn't happen. So, so what happens is you learn the ropes. you do some pretty difficult jobs, and you reach some conclusions, as I have in my private sector experience, my government experience, about what we need to do.
It's, for people who aren't familiar, we have foreign policy, law enforcement, U.S. Information Agency, Department of Justice. You worked with Attorney General Ed Meese.
Yes.
You were Deputy Director of the Management for OMB, Commissioner of the IRS. So you're familiar with bureaucracy.
Yeah, I ran the tax system, I ran the immigration system, and I helped create the Homeland Security Department. So I know about three pretty central issues for the country, and I know the bureaucracy. And what I stand for that really dovetails very nicely with this conference and what I spoke about this morning is I will execute the law as written, not as I might wish it to be. I've done that. There's a clear track record that I have of doing just that. I understand the powers of the executive branch, but I also understand the limitations under our Constitution and know how to honor that. You could ask Chuck Grassley, a Republican, or Chuck Schumer, a Democrat, how did I run the IRS? I called the shots down the middle. What's happened under this administration is really appalling in terms of the overreach on the executive branch authorities, and the best way to solve that or stop that is to get somebody in there who actually has some experience and won't be seduced by the trappings of power because they've been in the system before.
So that's a two-edged sword, obviously, Mark, because on the one hand, you know how to call it straight. On the other hand, you're sort of comfortable in the corridors of power, if I dare to say that.
Well, most businesses, most organizations, they pick somebody who has some familiarity in the business. The government's very complicated, very complicated. The policies that are set should come from the Congress, the people's representatives. It's the executive branch of government. The president and his or her team should be executing those laws, so it helps to have some knowledge of the entities, and that's the key, I'd say.
So having familiarity with the bureaucracy, and you're at the Republican Liberty Caucus, one of the big issues for people in this particular part of the party is the burden of bureaucracy and bureaucracies that act with the force of law without having been assigned such power specifically. How do you feel about that?
Well, that's why I say you execute the law as written, not as you might wish it to be. And one of the most dangerous things we're seeing is the overreach, the use of power, say, by the EPA or the president. Look, I advocate immigration reform, but what the president did with his unilateral executive order was both beyond his authorities, I believe, and it actually set back prospects for any real national debate on immigration. So I 100% down the line believe that if it's not in the statute, you can't make it up if you're in the executive branch. And that is essential. I also believe, frankly, the Congress does a pretty lousy job of writing laws, but what is important is oversight of the executive branch. I testified some 50 times before Congress when I was the IRS commissioner. Every time I did that, before I went up there, I learned more about my responsibilities to get ready for the hearing, and actually I did a better job of running the agency. So that oversight is important, but we've got to stop the ever more power of the executive branch, which, by the way, the Republican Congress has helped. Look at this Iranian agreement. It is mystifying to me that the Republican Congress, including our 4 senators or presidential candidates, wrote into law a ratification of what should have been treated as a treaty brought to the Senate for 2/3 approval by the Senate. They just said, nope, this goes into effect if you get 1/3 of one of the 2 chambers. That is just a total giveaway, the executive branch. The court's the same thing. The Affordable Care Act, the Burwell decision of the court, they said if the Congress writes a sloppy law, the executive branch can fix it. I don't think it should work that way. If it's sloppy or poorly drawn, it ought to be thrown out and sent back to the Congress. Let them fix it. So,
yeah, if the court did anything, it should just smack it down and say, "Try again, Buster."
Exactly.
Yeah, and when you say Congress is enabled, interpreting the law straight down the middle, executing it faithfully as written is all very well, except Congress has, in many cases, basically ducked on their duty by saying, we'll write this law in vague terms and we'll let the agency is empowered to do this. The secretary shall, the secretary may, which essentially is giving up their responsibility. They are ducking the accountability by making it that those regulations that are created as a result of their law, don't have their fingerprints on, not directly.
There's some truth in that, but having run a couple of very big regulatory agencies, I would tell you that if you get too explicit and you go too much to a rules-based, what happens is businesses, individuals can contort themselves. A rules-based scheme can often be very difficult to enforce, and people, they work their way around it in very negative ways. Mm-hmm. What you need to be clear in the language. It's got to be consistent. You can't have these 2,000-page bills like the Affordable Care Act. Wherever you come out on the Affordable Care Act, you can't have a 2,000-page bill. You've got to have proper vetting of these things. We need to return to what's called regular order, which is to say we have too many deals now that are cut for political purposes between the Speaker's office, the West Wing, and the Majority Leader's office in the Senate. You've got to go back to where we take our time. The Finance Committee or Ways and Means, they develop legislation. It's debated. Yep. And the right people are looking at it. And then yes, the administration takes a stance on it. But I understand your point, and we just have too many regulations. I came out of OMB. I understand this, so I take a pretty strong view of controlling the regulatory process to make sure it's not overdoing it.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. But as I say, I've found that Congress has given away their authority time and time again, and letting the regulatory agencies make law, as you say, is a very bad move.
Yeah, what Congress needs to do, as far as I'm concerned, there are really only 3 or 4 things Congress needs to do. I've mentioned the executive branch oversight. That's essential. It really is important because Congress, they are the elected representatives of the people, and they should hold people like me accountable, either as IRS commissioner or as the president. Absolutely. But they've got to write the budgets and deal with the taxing authorities. Those are the things that are in the Constitution. So they should get to work and fund the government, have those rigorous debates. But this crazy not doing the work or all the in the tax world, these extenders where the tax law lapses, that is ridiculous. Because what happens is businessmen and women can't make decisions about hiring or investment if the law doesn't exist. So they need to do their job, not worrying about these dozens of other new bills. Just get the tax system settled down. I've got proposals for that. Do their job on the budgeting. They should be follow their constitutional responsibility to declare war if that's needed, instead of this pussyfooting around some of the foreign policy debates. But if they don't pass a lot of laws, that's not going to break my heart. Frankly, we don't need a lot more laws.
No. In fact, if anything, we need very few more laws. We need a lot less, a lot of repeal.
Yes, I agree with that. It's time to, Kevin Brady, he's a congressman out of Texas, and Kevin and a colleague, I can't remember who it was, when I was at OMB, they tried to put in a sunset law, which would say that any program would sunset after 10 years unless explicitly reauthorized. We need to do something like that.
That would be terrific. On the other hand, in the case of the tax code, the less frequently you change it, the better. Much as we'd all like to take a hatchet to it, and we do, having tax giveaways that are then snatched back on a whim or on a failure to act a further extension, these are the things, as you say, that drive businesses crazy, drive individuals crazy. And we all saw our taxes jump back up a couple of years ago when the Social Security change expired.
Couldn't agree with you more, Mike. I ran the tax system. I worked in industry here and abroad, so I get this issue as much as anybody, more than anybody, I would tell you. And what I say is we need simplification. We need stability. We need permanence. So one of the things I say is you shouldn't enact a tax provision that lasts less than 10 years. That's the budget window. Mm-hmm. It's very disingenuous to have law go out for 2 years and then it's not reflected in the deficit projections in the out years. My proposal on the taxes is to put in a consumption tax. If you could do that, tax on goods and services, you can take 150 million Americans off the income tax rolls altogether. Everybody would pay the consumption tax, and then the income tax would go back to what it was when it started a century ago, only on the higher earners. An individual earning $50,000 or more, or a couple at $100,000, their rates would come down significantly, but they'd still be in the system. And the business rates on the big C corps, that would come down significantly too. It's interesting because both sides of the aisles of the aisle agree that our businesses aren't as competitive as they need to be overseas. This proposal, I would suggest, it was developed by a Treasury official under Bush 41 who's a Columbia professor now, Michael Gratz. Mm-hmm. I like its framework. I think it's solid, and it has two principal advantages. First is it's revenue neutral. We've got a bunch of proposals out there on our side, which I think are sheer folly because we have a huge spending problem. We have these deficits. They've come down to 2.5% of GDP now, but we've still got the debt, and the deficits are going to creep back up in the out years as people in my age cohort start to claim these benefits. So we've got to cut the spending, but we need to bring in the revenue, about as much revenue as we're doing now. The revenue is about at where it was under the Reagan administration in terms of its percentage of the GDP. We need to clean up the system so that the tax code is more business-friendly, more investment-friendly, simpler, but we can't afford to cut trillions out of it because we'll just accelerate our demise to Greek-like status. We're in New Hampshire here. New Hampshire's just gone through an epic battle in the state legislature to make sure they have their fiscal house in order. We've got to do the same thing here in the tax world. The other thing about my proposal is the fair tax and the flat tax are very attractive on the surface. The problem is the charge that they're going to benefit the well-to-do. The thing about the GRATs, or the competitive tax plan is what's called, is it's distributionally neutral. The high end will pay about as much as they're paying now. The middle pay about as much as they're paying now. And the lower end will pay about as much as they're paying now. So I think it's fair, too. You're giving something to the American people, and yet it's consistent with our long-term needs.
Sure. The only objection I have to a plan like that is if you introduce a consumption tax in parallel with an income tax, you're going to end up eventually with an administration or a Congress that will raise both, and you'll have European levels of value-added tax on top of your income taxes.
People make that argument. That's where you've got to be very active in the democratic process and make sure that you're controlling one of the two chambers, or you've got the presidency, so you stop that. I understand, but there's risk everywhere, but we can't let the system go on the way it is, where it's just beholden to the special interests. It's not working.
I'm in favor of consumption taxes in general because it shifts the burden from the goods produced to the goods sold, and thereby evens the playing field between our manufacturers and foreign manufacturers. I just don't like the idea of a mixed bag where we end up with everything going through the roof and we all wonder why we're poor.
I think nothing's perfect, but you've seen. Look, we've got an income tax system now. It should be clean, but look at what we've done with the Affordable Care Act and the surcharges and all this stuff. That's been going up, and I think you enjoy the same, or you bear the same risk in the system that we have now. And I for one don't believe it's going to be very easy to engage in what would be traditional tax reform, 86 Act reform, where you cut out tax expenditures and lower rates. Yep. That's because every time you try to touch one of these tax expenditures, you get into a food fight of huge proportions, and that's very difficult to fix.
Change gears real quick because we're gonna let you go in a minute.
Yes.
National security.
Yes.
Real quick, just give us a synopsis of your position.
Right.
And
well, I think that this president has been true to his word. He said in 2007, I will engage without precondition with our adversaries.
He did.
And he has done that, and it's been at the expense of our security and the security of our allies around the world. What I say is the hopes of that Nobel Committee have not been realized. The world is not more peaceful than it was when he came in. We need to go back to a traditional foreign policy that is based on strength and working with our own alliances, our allies. We need to back them up. We need to push back on Putin, make his expansionist intentions as uncomfortable and as painful for him as possible when he starts to do what he's doing. We need to watch out for China. China is obviously a ever more muscular player. I agree with those who said we should ignore these islands as an example in terms of our shipping activities. And in the Mideast, what a mess. What a mess. What you see here is you can't have a president who runs his mouth and says, I'm going to draw a red line in Syria, and then he doesn't back it up. And by the way, again, with some of the Republicans, including some of those in the race, not supporting him when he did say, I want to do something. That was wrong on our part. But you can't telegraph every action. Ronald Reagan was successful in this area because he had strong principles. And frankly, some of the folks on the other side said, he just might do X. They didn't know what it was, but they were a little worried. When you draw rigid lines like the red line and don't enforce it, and then you say on a belated basis, we need to degrade and destroy ISIS, but we can't send in troops, you're boxing yourself in. I'm not saying you need a huge number of troops, but you box yourself in. You can't operate that way in this tough world in which we live.
You've got to make them believe you're going to do it, even if in the end you're working to avoid it.
Amen. That is 100% correct.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Well, we're going to let you go because we got to start wrapping up and putting our stuff away. But thanks so much for taking some time to talk
Mark,
to us.
thanks for joining us.
It's markforamerica.com.
Yep. Take one of our bookmarks. And
where'd they go?
Did you put them all away?
Oh, I might have one right here. Hold on. I think we can manage to give you a.
And get in touch sometime. We'll have you on another Saturday.
Love to do it
by phone if you're not local.
Love to do it. Love to
call in and we can interview you from anywhere.
You're here, but you're here in New Hampshire.
We're here in New Hampshire.
Yes,
oh, well, good. Well, I'm spending a lot of time in the state. We'll do it again.
All right. Thank you so much,
thank
sir.
you.
Thank you very much, Mark. We appreciate you coming over.
Thank you, Steve. It's Everson. Mark Everson.
Mark Everson.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteGrock.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter.